Everyone, welcome back to another episode of Living Electric. It's always fun when we have a guest who works in the electric vehicle industry, and today we have Andre Hudson, the head of design for INDI EV. Thanks for joining us, Andre.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me on today.
Well, should definitely be a good conversation. We're going to dive further into Andre's industry experience with auto design, as well as the INDI EV, and talk about their first electric vehicle, the INDI One. So, for beginning, Andre, do you mind giving us kind of like an overview and introduction of who you are?
Yeah, certainly. My name is Andre Hudson, as you said, and I'm head of design here at Indy. I have about 20. This is my 24th year in the industry, so
Oh my gosh.
it's been quite some time, which is kind of depressing in a way as we get older. But really consider myself blessed and fortunate to have had such a great career in this industry, and worked for several companies now on some key products over the last couple decades. So it's been a wild ride. As a kid, I would have never imagined, I'd be a car designer when I grew up. I always wanted to fly jets, but took a second path, and it's been fantastic.
That's awesome. Yeah, that was going to be my question. How did you get into the automotive industry in terms of design? Because you just mentioned you wanted to fly jets. Is it kind of like a path that took you into automotive design?
Yeah, as a little guy, I always imagined myself flying fighter planes, right, military, and so I was kind of preparing myself for that route, going to one of the academies. And sophomore year in high school, my eyes failed me, started to fail,
Oh no.
and I had to get corrective vision and glasses. And at the time, the Air Force Academy, to enter the pilot training program, one of the prerequisites was perfect, 20/20 vision. So I couldn't check that box anymore. So unfortunately, I didn't want to go other paths. But it's actually interesting. A friend had given me a magazine. I think it was Car and Driver or Motor Trend, and there was
Hmm.
a story about the Dodge Viper concept. And there was a little sidebar in the article that pictured the clay model for the Dodge Viper and the team responsible standing behind it. And I was like, a lot of people don't actually think about, where cars come from. It's just some magic, industrial machine that just stamps these things out.
Right.
But I'm like, wow, people and artists, creative people, style and create these machines. And so, it kind of sparked my interest. I had always been into drawing and sketching airplanes and cars and boats and anything transportation related. So that kind of was the spark to set me off in this direction. Growing up in Colorado, I go to my high school counselors and say I want to design cars, and of course, for them, by default, they're like, you need to study engineering, study mechanical engineering by
Hmm.
default. And so I started looking at all these engineering schools around the country, but something inside me said this isn't quite. I don't think this is quite the right thing, because I want to, be a effect on how they look and how they feel. And so I composed a letter and sent it to Chrysler at the time, because they were the ones that inspired this whole thing. So sent it off to Detroit, and I still remember the day coming home from school and opening the mailbox, and there was this Chrysler headed letter in there to a young Mr. Hudson, and opened the letter, and there was this communication from the design department that basically laid out the path forward to design. And so that kind of set me on my way. And I'll always be forever grateful for the time that Chrysler Design. I'm sure they get all these letters from kids asking about it. But
Right.
but certainly it affected and shaped the direction of my life. So I applied to art and design school, and ended up going to design school in Detroit.
Okay.
Nice.
Nice. Yeah, I was
That's
kind of
awesome.
wondering how the tie-in from Colorado to Detroit happened. So that makes sense. So did you end up working at Chrysler? Because we looked at your LinkedIn and it looked like you started with GM. Did you start at Chrysler?
Yeah, I actually had an internship there, which I was, beyond ecstatic, I think my junior year. But when I graduated, I ended up getting an offer. I had a couple possibilities, but ended up going to GM. So started there in General Motors in '98, which was fantastic.
Is there any standout vehicles from your time at GM that you remember kind of putting your mark on, or ones that you liked working with the best?
Yeah, again, I've been really fortunate to have the given opportunities, and trying to run with them with some key products. So a couple years out of school, the head of a digital studio at the time, Ed Wilburn, who was eventually became head of all product development, design-wise, assigned me to the SSR. If you guys remember the SSR, kind of that hot rod pickup truck.
Right.
So
Yeah.
the exterior was basically done, but there was no interior. And since as a young designer, I was pretty proficient in a digital design software called Alias, he tasked me in a couple months to create a theme, for the SSR to get it ready for the Detroit Auto Show. So that was kind of a key initial project, that people know that I worked on, which was awesome. And as a young kid out of school, I think I was like 22, 23 at the time. That was that project. And then shortly after that, I ended up going to England, actually, to the advanced studio there for a couple years, working under a designer, Simon Cox, who's an extremely talented designer in our industry, and worked on several projects from Corvette to Cadillacs with him. If you guys recall the Cadillac CN, which was this our mid-engine V12 exotic, with the gold wing doors.
Yep.
Poor me, I had to work on this exotic Cadillac with Simon, which was again amazing. We built that car in the UK for show, and ended up sending it to Detroit. Can't remember what year that was. I want to say maybe 2000 or 2001, maybe. So that was a great project. Worked on that a little bit, trying to take it to production, but that never really came to fruition. And then I worked on the large Cadillac, the 16, if you remember, the big caddy they did for the 100-year centennial. It was a beast, long dashed axle, that huge car. I did the initial theme that became that full size again in England. So that was fantastic, but didn't really get to follow that through to the end, just kind of the initial model. And then when I came back to the States, I was assigned to the Saturn Sky Roadster. So I worked with Franz von Holzhausen, who's at Tesla fame now. He was finishing the Solstice at the time, and GM Bob Lutz had decided to put the VX Lightning concept theme on the Solstice package, and it was going to be the Saturn Sky, or the new Opel Speedster that they sold it in the UK. So I sat there for a couple years and was responsible for the exterior of the Sky. So that was my last project at GM.
Wow. Well, the Sky is one of my favorite roadsters. Like, I grew up around like Porsches and BMW like Z3s. So like when the Sky came out, I was super excited about it.
That's awesome.
It's beautiful.
It was just such a nice. I remember working on that car, and the doors to the studio would be open, and all the old the Corvette guys would come rolling by, and you'd see them stop and peek in there. I remember one day it was kind of lifted up in the air, and they're like, "What is that?" I'm like, "Oh, this is the new Saturn." And you could just see the look on their face, and they're like, "Can you fit a V8 in that thing?" And it's like, "Yeah, you probably could squeeze a V8 in there."
Right.
But yeah, she was pretty. That was a cool car.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful. I actually think I have a few friends that LS swapped some old Skies. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think you can fit a V8 in there if you try hard enough.
it was wide, so I know you can do it. But yeah, that was such a cool project. It had the clamshell front hood, which was an amazing design feature, and it was kind of a pain in the butt because the lamps had to go with the hood. So as a designer, you had to make sure that all the clearances for the fascia and the hood and lamps all worked. But I finally bought one years later just to kind of trick it out like I always wanted one. And it was great to go to the car wash and open this thing up, right? The rear popped and the hood opened, and it looked like this beautiful, cool little toy. So it really was a neat product.
Oh, that's awesome.
Do you find I was going to ask if what comes first generally when you're designing a car? Does like the design or kind of that, like you mentioned, kind of the theme of the car start first, or does the engineering team take that first and say, we know we want these specs, and we got to put it all in this package, and then it goes to the design team. Which kind of goes first there?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's actually something I've learned coming to a startup, that you don't realize at a big company like an OEM, how much work is already established
Right.
on the engineering side, right? So much of the package, the part content, where the thing's going to be built, what it's going to cost, is really already established, and kind of those ingredients are given to the design team, including background and marketing, right? Who's going to buy the thing, what it's going to cost, what they're going to pay for, how they're going to use it. And as a designer, you take all of that information, right, and you start to spin this idea on what this thing should look like. And I compare that again to OEM to startup, because I don't think I realized how much pre-work was done on all these projects that I could claim I was a part of, but thinking I had so much more to do with it. But when you come to a startup, you realize when you're trying to do all of that, at the same time, you're like, holy cow! You don't realize at the big five, big six globally, there's teams of hundreds or thousands in the background. That have already done so much work for you, and the designer can step in there and make it the best it can be.
So going from, like the OEMs to a startup, what was the biggest thing you noticed in terms of like design freedom? Like, did you have a little bit more liberty in terms of what you could design?
You certainly had more liberty. You kind of have to pick and choose your battles, of course, with engineering, and try to. The beauty of a startup, of course, is you can sit there and establish where you want things to be, how you want them to function, and you don't have all that pre-work that was done saying, Andre, I know you want to move this here or have this packaged here, but look, this is where it's going to be. This is the part you're using. And so that's very much an advantage, as a small team, being able to build this thing from the ground up, and start to establish proportions and dimensions and features that you want. On the same token, it's also a challenge because you don't have all that established, right? So you're still trying to understand who's going to support you through the project, who's going to supply you the components, what are you designing around? On one hand, it's a fantastic thing. On the other thing, it just presents a whole new set of challenges.
Yeah, I could definitely imagine. I mean, building a vehicle from the ground up. Like, I know the team at INDI, obviously you guys have, people who are working on the project from the ground up, from design to engineering and so forth. To pivot to INDI EV and like the INDI One, I know that the INDI One was unveiled in Los Angeles, right, in November? How did that feel to have that vehicle just like unveiled to the world? Like, I'm sure that was a great feeling.
Yeah, I think for all of us, particularly at INDI, because we've been running, really under the radar for several years, and that was intentional. The founder wanted us to keep pressing further along in the project before we kind of showed the world what we had been working on. So, after several years of work, finally being able to put that out there, and we kind of did it really casual. We kind of just set it out on the floor. We didn't do a huge thing, and it was kind of neat because people would wander by and stop and look and what is that thing, and what are you guys doing? And so it was kind of fun doing it that way, coming from the OEMs. Like at Hyundai, when I was there, so much money is spent on these PR events and all this lead up up to launching a new car or a facelift. So this was everything with us is a bit more casual. This idea of we're trying to build a product that we really want people to kind of take and just use it to fit their lifestyle as they see fit, and we just kind of want to be like a part of your your life and your family. So we're a little bit more casual with how we do things, which is kind of neat. So to answer your question though, throwing it out there to LA and just being down on the floor, we didn't have it up on a stand behind ropes. It was like, come over here, check it out, sit in it. What do you guys think? And that was really cool. Were you guys out at that show? Did you make it out?
No.
Okay.
No, I was not, unfortunately. No.
Yeah. Right. I just attended the Seattle Auto Show about 2 weeks before. Okay. And I had to get back to work. I really wish I could have made it to LA because I heard it was a great event.
You'll have to come down and see us this year.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Andre, actually, just to kind of take a few step back, my question kind of jumped forward, and we actually didn't really get into like an overview of what like INDI EV is and INDI One. Can you give our listeners kind of like a brief synopsis of what INDI EV strives for, and then we can talk more about the INDI One?
Yes, certainly. Really at Indy, we feel that the future metrics of EV performance is really going to be measured in computing power, and what this digital device that happens to also move you from A to B is capable of, in your life for, producing and being productive, whether it's creative or business or social. For years now, mainly because of Tesla, which is fair play, they really built this idea that EVs are performance, oriented. And that's what everybody knew, years ago because of them. Like, oh my God, this car is so fast, 0 to 60. And of course, as an EV, range is always a topic. But the idea now that an EV sits on this, high voltage system, a self-contained powertrain, actually can allow you to do something that's so much more, with this car. And so our first product and the idea for and reason for being for us here is that we've integrated a unique and separate hardware set within the car, a Windows-based computer that we've diligently worked to integrate with the vehicle systems as far as how you interface with them, but really stay separate and isolated from those vehicle systems that control safety features and, your anti-crash systems and all those things, because that needs to stay a black box. But this window-based computer, which we like to refer to as VIC, or Vehicle Integrated Computer, allows us to be essentially a conduit for us to bring in, this very unique user capabilities. And right now, as I said, it's because it's a Windows-based machine and a very high-powered computer, and we like to refer to it as a supercomputer because it really is in a car. The possibilities of what you can do, hardware and software-wise, is like nothing that's been seen, in a vehicle so far.
Yeah, I've seen some of the videos of like the dual screens and like the augmented reality and like the VR headsets, and just like from a content production side, it would be such a cool vehicle to produce videos with.
Yeah, you guys would love it.
Yeah.
No, it's great. Depending on who you're talking to or presenting the car to, you see their wheels start spinning and asking questions. You mean I could use this to create real-time social content while I'm out and about, throughout the day, or I could use this to run my business in this way, or I could link into my smart home and do this with it. And, we've you mentioned the gaming, our founder's background is really in mobile game technology and mobile technology. So that's just one aspect, that we've chose to highlight within the INDI One, is this idea of running these AAA games with this VR content, which actually interfaces with the vehicle movement and system. So as you do the gameplay within the game, you're moving with the vehicle, which eliminates, that nausea that you would otherwise have. And, everybody that hops out of it, they're just grinning ear to ear. It is a pretty amazing experience to be able to do these games within the car. You feel like you're kind of in the game because your whole body's feeling this movement that your eyes are seeing, in the gameplay. So it's a pretty cool experience. So that's one aspect.
Wow.
That's awesome. Yeah, from the videos I've seen, I was kind of bummed I didn't get to make it to New York, the auto show, to experience that, because just from like the people getting in and out of the vehicle, you could see how excited they were about it.
Yeah, that's always the coolest thing, right? Seeing people really hop out of it because they know, okay, they're kind of unsure, getting into the experience, but then when they get out of the car, they're just like, holy cow, that's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, one thing I'm like, I wish vehicles did better is being kind of like a mobile workstation, because like having the computer built into the car helps immensely. Because like what I do right now, if I'm working remote from somewhere, I'm taking a call from my car, I've got my laptop kind of like propped up weird. It's not a comfortable position. It's just kind of propped up inside my car. I've got to have my phone up with my hotspot, and it's like all this extra kind of stuff that it would be nice if it was all integrated into one thing.
Yeah, I've been on, team calls where the team members, pulling over to the side of the road, right, to take the call. And, I shouldn't say this, but, I drive home sometimes late meetings, and I've got my phone, plugged in sideways, and I'm not doing a video, but there's some stuff being this. It's dangerous as hell, right? I shouldn't be doing it, but yeah, people have been, and kind of COVID showed us all that. Not only that, what you mentioned and I just mentioned, but the idea that working remotely meant I could be anywhere.
Right.
Right. So
Yeah,
I
you don't
could be
necessarily
traveling.
need to be at home.
Right. And,
Yeah.
I could be halfway across the country, or I even, we allowed one of the design team members actually during that time to he did a tour of the US.
Wow.
And he kept working, and it was amazing. He timed his stops, with mobile signals and battery usage. But he showed you could do it. It wasn't easy. It was a bit cumbersome,
Right.
but
Yeah.
it was cool because we started this project, of course, before COVID. But we were thinking, like, what if no matter if you had this car, you would never really worry about where you were, to do anything. Whether you were capturing social content personally, if that was your business, or if you had a work to attend to or a meeting. You really, wherever you were with your vehicle, you could basically handle business, and that was kind of really exciting. And then COVID kind of proved that people actually want that kind of lifestyle.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, this car is really, something that would be perfect for all of us in that nature. And just so your listeners understand too, on top of that computer, what's vital to make it work, of course, is a unique hardware set. So within the vehicle itself, there's two 15-inch displays up front. One of them is linked directly to the supercomputer on the passenger side. But there's also an array of cameras that are specifically to be used with the computer. So there's 3 onboard cameras to capture front and second row, also forward-facing second row, and then there's 2 exterior cameras. So just by voice command as well, you could capture, video forward as you're driving through Yosemite, or capture a selfie within the car, or record, video or audio. As a parent, I always wish there were so many cool moments in the car, when the kids are, when they're really young, singing their first song on the radio that they really like, or, there's so many great moments just as a family, because we do spend a lot of times in our cars.
Right.
That's another cool aspect of this vehicle, right? Is it being able to capture, these moments and archive them, or post them real time. So yeah, it's just, the possibilities are really limitless. And another key thing with the Windows system is that we will offer a software developers kit, SDK, which is even more exciting to me, because of course people are already, running and thinking about, how else can I use this digital piece of hardware that's rolling through, my city or my urban environment.
Right.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah,
that's
you
really
mentioned, I think that this is one thing that a lot of people in the EV industry are going to come to terms with, and I definitely think INDI EV has already made it a point. The cars are riding on these huge power packs, and so many companies have focused on range, performance, and that's it, not necessarily what the vehicle can do for you. So I think it's really cool to see that INDI has focused on that, as well as provided performance and range. I think we're just going to start seeing more and more of that as people realize that these are not just A to B, vehicles. You can do so much more with them. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, again, the potential is there, for it to do all that. So, and range is, range is a big thing. I understand, even, people that don't do the long trips, you still, for that once a year, think about, can I use this car to take that 250, 300 mile trip? And it's funny that dictates, a purchase decision, though 99.8% of the time, your general vicinity in the day, is maybe 20 miles, 30 miles. I unfortunately do like 100 miles round trip every day.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, it's
wow.
insane. But yeah, I think people will realize that this thing can be a tool for me, right? It's not just that mode of transportation.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
So to jump to the design of the INDI One, because I would love to talk about like the features and some of like the range specs, as well as the I believe it's the Halo, right? The steering wheel design for the safety features. Just to start from like an overview of the exterior design, what were some of the thought process, and like did you implement some of your previous work into the Indy One?
Well,
If you
I
can
think,
answer that.
of course. I mean, all of us as we get older, of course, pull from past experiences.
Hmm.
It's kind of surprising to me that we laid out the Indy One with, it's a mid-size vehicle, so people can imagine it kind of slots between a Model Y and a Model X in length,
Mm.
and it's fairly wide. It has a higher seating position, which we thought was key, just for safety, particularly here in North America, because
Hmm.
so many people are used to the crossover SUV where they can sit up in traffic. So that was key. So we did raise. It's a bit taller vehicle. I think people are a little surprised when they see it in person that it's actually a little bigger than what they imagine in the photos. What's surprising to me as a designer, or maybe shouldn't be, is that in the past year now that new products have been launched, including the Y, the Mach-E from Ford,
Hmm.
even the Volvo, though it's a little bit smaller, is that design teams all around the world were kind of thinking about, this EV in a somewhat similar way, right? The idea that you sit a bit higher, hatchback functionality with the faster roofline. Our Indy One is a very nice, fast silhouette. The windshield actually stretches quite far forward and down, which does give it a very kind of modern and futurist look. But also, when you sit inside, we push the instrument panel down in a way. So when you see the glass touch down way forward, and you kind of don't see much of the IP behind the display, you do get this amazing sense of space. So it's kind of a cool architecture when you sit in the car. As well, we designed the body structures to have the full panoramic glass roof, so there's no support structure there kind of midway through the roof that many cars have. It's a completely open.
Oh,
Uh,
nice.
when
Yeah.
you sit in the cabin with that feature as well, it just feels really light and airy. So and again, that was both of those features, the windshield push forward and the open skylight, were challenged for our CAA and structural team for our crash box and safety, but we've worked through all of those issues there. So I'm really proud of the whole team on that. But yeah, again, you just built a car that you wanted to be able to use, and having gone through, family now with kids, you think about the rear space, making sure that that's useful, what you can do with the cargo area, which we've designed a patented system we call Click and Lock, which is an integrated system of tracks, which isn't new, but a series of features and accessories that will integrate into our system in the back of the car, because we've really thought about trying to create lifestyle packages for people depending on how they will use it. A photography for photo and drones, one for sports sessions to hold gear and equipment as well for sports, and also kind of fun working on a pet package now, building a pet loft in the back, which we're kind of having fun with right now for
Oh,
for
cool.
those that have small to mid-sized dogs, which in Cali everybody has a dog.
Yep.
So yeah, this our main thing is a digital story, but I am proud to say that the design and engineering team have spent a lot of time really making some physical, usable features that are quite unique as well.
Nice. Yeah, I definitely would. I would utilize that dog. Like, I think you called it a dog loft. Is that the
Yeah,
term?
we're calling it the loft because we're actually making like this cool kind of modern loft space in the back for the dog.
Oh, cool. Yeah,
That's
we
cool.
we we have two medium to big sized dogs. I feel like they would love that. And we always have to rescue the one on walks because he's too lazy to walk. So we have to like grab our
You're
car, pick him up.
dragging him.
Yep. Yeah, we call it the dog taxi. Our neighbors are like,
Okay,
there they go. So that would be great to have
that's funny.
that. Yeah. So, Andre, you mentioned safety in terms of like the engineering. It seems like based on the design of the Halo steering wheel, can you go more into details of how that works and like how that would one work with like accessibility and to make sure people are aware that they're driving safe for what's happening around them?
Yes, certainly. The Halo you keep referring to is our system that our driver warning system that we've integrated into the steering wheel, and I for one am a lot of vehicles now, you're almost overwhelmed with sound and feel and visual audio, and also
Yep.
touch now with the vibrating wheels.
Yep.
It's I can't express the last 5-6 years I just get in the car and start shutting stuff down because I actually get more anxiety with all those systems on, like I really do.
And stuff's beeping all the time.
Yeah, all the
too,
time.
I feel
You're
like
just like,
and you don't know where it's coming from. And
or like I said, you're always jumping because you're like, oh God, what's that? I remember one time on the freeway, I had a rear, I won't say the product, but I was looking to exit the carpool, and the thing, loud beeping, all this, and warning through the wheel, and I jerked the wheel back into car. And I always check, everything. So I was pretty sure I was clear, but as I moved over, everything started going off, and I jerked the wheel back to get back in carpool lane, and I just remember that the car got a little squirrely on me for a minute, and you just think like, oh my God, I would have never, did it avoid me from hitting somebody, or was it reacting to something that wasn't? Like, I still don't even know.
Right.
And so maybe I'm a little sensitive to it. So anyway, the Halo, we were just trying to think like, how can we bring some of the warning systems kind of intuitively to the driver without overwhelming them. So integrate it within the steering wheel. If you can imagine, and our steering wheel is kind of a squircle shape, it's a little square. So if you imagine that as looking at the plan view of your car, we have a system that gives you, side blind spot, rear, contact warning, also front impact represented on the steering wheel visually in a very kind of modern, slim, light read. So you can adjust the brightness, of course, to tone it down if you need. But again, it's just a way that right there in your periphery, without even, you're staring forward anyway, that the wheel is letting you know, hey, you've got somebody, coming up on the rear right or the rear left, or on your left and right if you don't see them as you turn on your turn indicator. So again, we were just, trying to think of, how can we make some systems intuitive but not overwhelming or creating more anxiety.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Well, Alex and I are both Tesla drivers, and I think Alex can attest to just the autopilot sounds and just the sheer amount of overstimulation. Yeah, we had a Volkswagen ID4 that had the ID light up on the dashboard, and even that was too much. It was cool. It was cool. Well, I don't want to talk too much about when it worked. I'll just say that when it worked really well. But at night, some of the since it was so large and in front of you, it was just really distracting for what it was meant to do. So like, it was almost like to me, it was almost something that could impair safety versus like improving it. But yeah.
And I think that's why, user customizability to some degree, as much as we can, we should allow people to do, knock the light down, still. I'm a big thing at night too. I hate getting in a car and just all these super bright. First thing I do is turn the brightness all the way down on the clusters and displays, because it's just you're just overwhelmed now with like you said, kind of sensory overload.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's cool. This is reminding me almost of like in video games when you're playing like a racing game and you put it in like third person view.
You're right. You almost want to do that.
You kind of like that is always more comfortable, right? Because you can see all the way around the car. You can see exactly what's going on. Whereas like if you switch to cockpit view, you've got this limited range of view and you can't really see what's going on. So that's really cool.
As we wrap up, reservations for the INDI One are still open. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes. We opened reservations during the New York show a couple weeks ago.
Nice. So can you kind of just like give like a little shout out to INDI where our listeners could find you guys, and if they want to put a reservation in, where they can find that?
Oh, yeah, of course. So please feel free to learn more about our first product, the INDI One, at indiev.com. You'll learn about the product, and again, I didn't touch a lot about the, it's the launch vehicle is going to be a dual motor, so it'll be all-wheel drive, about 480 horsepower. We will launch with a 95 kilowatt hour battery pack, which will be good for a 300-mile range at least. We're still tweaking that a bit. But yeah, you'll be able to get all the information at the core of what the INDI One is as a EV, and then certainly some more information about the VIC, that supercomputer that's under the front hood, when you go to the website. And you can do pre-orders through the website. we've been pressed by our CEO to offer a fairly unique color palette at launch. So please, we took inspiration from our environment. We're based here in Southern California. So we took a lot of inspiration from our environment here for a really unique color palette for the launch edition cars, which are quite nice. So, and they also, each vehicle, depending on the color, will come with a really unique item, so which you can check out on the website. But yeah, please encourage you to check us out. And yeah.
Sounds good. Thanks, Andre, for joining us. And Alex, do you have any other questions?
No, I don't think so. I think we're about up on time. So yeah, definitely appreciate you being on, and listeners, go check out INDI EV.
Right.
Yes.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you. The show's fantastic, and thank you so much for having us as part of it.
Yeah,
Awesome.
definitely.
Thank you,
so
Andre. And hopefully we can get to Los Angeles soon to see the Indy
Yeah,
One
you got to
person.
come by. You got to come by and see us if you're out here.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yeah, we'll
All
make
right.
it a point. Awesome. Thanks, Andre.
Thank you.